Hello everyone, my name is Zhu Tianyuan. I'm from Yonsei University English Language and Literature Department. Today I want to talk about Ezra Pounds, a famous American poet and critic. There was one sentence that he always kept in mind. Good writers are those who keep the language efficient, that is to say, keep it accurate, keep it clear. Today, my main purpose of this video is to introduce Ezra Pound's life experiences and his major works. At last, I will introduce his imagism and also I will read a famous poem. Firstly, let's start with his experiences. Ezra Pound was a famous American poet. His work always introduced a lot of major figures in the early modernist poetry movement. His contribution to poetry began with his development of imagism, a movement derived from classical Chinese and Japanese poetry, stressing clarity, precision, and economy of language. Pounds was born in a small-town two-story house in Haley, the only child of Homer Pound and Ezra Weston. His father had worked in Haley since 1883 as a registrar of the General Land Office. The family moved to Jenkintown, Pennsylvania in 1893, bought a six-bedroom house in Wincott. Pounds arrived in Gibraltar on 23 March 1908, where for a few weeks he earned $15 a day working as a guide to American tourists. By the end of April, he was in Venice, living over a bakery near the Seinville Bridge. In July, he self-published his first book of poetry. The London Evening Standard called it wild and haunting stuff. Absolutely poetic, original, imaginative, passionate, and spiritual. The title was from the third canto of Dante's Purgatorio, which alluded to the death of Manfred, king of Sicily. The book was dedicated to his friend, the Philadelphia artist William Brooke Smith, who had recently died of tuberculosis. In August, Pound moved to London, where he lived almost continuously for the next 12 years. He told his university friend, William Carlos Williams, London, that of old Luton, is a place of poesy. English poets such as Alfred Lord Tennyson had made a particular kind of Victorian verse, popular with public. According to the modernist scholar James Knapp, Pound rejected the idea of poetry as versified moral essay. He wanted to focus on the individual experience and concrete rather than the abstract. In August 1912, Harriet Marrow hired Pound as a regular contributor to poetry. He submitted his own poems as well as poems by James Joyce, Robert Frost, D.H. Lawrence, H.D., and Aldington, and collected material for a 64-page anthology. The Imagist movement began to attract attention from critics. The Pounds settled down in Paris in January 1921 and several months later moved into an inexpensive apartment. However, they were unhappy in Paris. His wife Dorothy complained about the wingers and Ezra's health was poor. At one dinner, a guest randomly tried to stab him. To Pound, this underlined that their time in France was over. Hemingway saw how Pound indulged in a small nervous breakdown. Leading to 2 days in an American hospital, they decided to move to a quieter place. They chose Rapallo, Italy, a town of 15,000. Italy is my place for starting things, Pound told a friend. During this period, they lived on Dorothy's income, supplemented by dividends from stock she had invested in. In 1945, enamored with Benigno Mussolini, Pound made anti-American radio broadcasts during World War II. He was arrested as a traitor. In 1958, he returned to Italy, where he continued to write and make translations until he died in 1972. On his 87th birthday, October 30th, he was too weak to leave his bedroom. The next night, he was admitted to the Civil Hospital of Venice, where he died in his sleep of an intestinal blockage on November 1st. Dorothy was unable to travel to the funeral, unfortunately. Speaking of Ezra Pound's work, his work included Ripostes, Allum Spento, Cathy, Homage to Sectus Properties, and famous poems included In a Station of the Metro, A Pact. The most famous one was the unfinished 120-section epic, The Cantos. Pounds began work on the cantos in earnest after relocating to Italy. The poems concern good and evil, a descendant into hell followed by redemption of paradise. Its hundreds of characters fall into three groupings: those who enjoy hell and stay there, those who experiences a metamorphosis and want to leave, and a few who lead the rest of paradise. Its composition was difficult and involved several false starts, and he abandoned most of his earliest draft, beginning again in 1922. The first three appeared in Poetry in June to August 1917. The Malatesta cantos appeared in the Criterion in July 1923, and two further cantos were published in the Translectic Review in January 1924. Pounds published 90 copies in Paris in 1925, cantos of Ezra Pound for the beginning of a poem of some length, now first made into a book. Ezra Pound was also a famous person, stands for Imagism. Imagism is a poetic movement of England and the United States, which flourished from 1909 to 1917. It is a branch of the symbolism literary movement which was used chiefly in the Western world during the time. It stressed free choice of subject matters, often dealing with single concentrated movements of experiences, concreteness of imagery, musical phrases, economy of expression, and the use of dominant image. It aimed at instantaneous effect, visual and concise. In Ezra Pound's world, there are three phases of Imagism. The origins of Imagism are found in two poems, Autumn and A City Sunset by T.E. Hume. These were published in January 1909 by the Poets Club in London. The second phase of the movement was the period of some 3 years, 1912 to 1914, when Ezra Pound took over and championed the new poetry. In 1914, Pound turned from Imagism to Vorticism. Since Pound left Imagism, Amy Lowell carried on leading that movement and caught up with several principled propositions. Another representative of Imagism, T.E. Hume, suggests that modern art should deal with expressions and communication of momentary phrase in the poet's mind, and poetic techniques should become subtle enough to record exactly the momentary impressions, which means each word must be an image scene. Each sentence should be a lump, a piece of clay, a vision scene. According to Ezra, an image is that which presents an intellectual and emotional complex in an instant of time. An image gives that sense of sudden liberation, that sense of freedom from time limits and space limits, that sense of sudden growth, which we experience the greatest works of art. In 1912, Pons and Flint laid down three imagist poetic principles. The first one is direct treatment of the thing, whether subjective or objective. The second is to use absolutely no word that does not contribute to the presentation. The third one is, as regarding rhythm, to compose in the sequence of musical phrase, not in the sequence of metronome. Last part of my introduction, I want to introduce a famous poem written by Li Bai, translated by Ezra. The Chinese name was 长干行. The English name translated by Ezra was A River Merchant's Wife. The River Merchant's Wife, a letter, was published in 1915 in Ezra Pound's third collection of poetry, Cathy translation, which contains poems composed from the 16 notebooks of Ernest Fenollosa, a scholar of Chinese literature. Chang'an, a village in present-day Jiangning County, Jiangsu Province, which is near Yangtze River. Chang'anxing is actually a tone name in Yuefu, a poem collection back to Han Dynasty. Different tone name has different form. Normally, 长干行 is composed with 4 sentences, and each sentence contains 5 Chinese characters. But Li Bai extended it to 30 sentences, but still 5 words in a sentence. This poem was a self-narrative of Merchant's Wife. It was divided into 5 stanzas according to the emotional changes of hers. Each stanza shows an aspect of our heroine's life. And actually, Li Bai had wrote 2 pieces of poems in the title of 长干行, but compared to the one we are going to study, the second piece is the little bit plain and not as well known as the first piece. Here, let's enjoy the poem together. The River Merchant's Wife, a letter. While my hair was still cut straight across my forehead, I played about the front gate, pulling flowers. You came by on bamboo stilts, playing horse. You walked about my seat, playing the blue plums. And we went on living in the village of Chokkan. 2 small people without dislike or suspicion. At 14, I married my lord, you. I never laughed, being bashful. Lowering my head, I looked at the wall. Caught you 1,000 times, I never looked back. At 15, I stopped squirreling. I desired my dust to be mingled with yours, forever and forever and forever. Why should I climb the lookout? At 16, you departed. You went into far Kututan, by the river's whirling edges, and you have been gone 5 months. The monkeys made sorrowful noise overhead. You dragged your feet when you went out. By the gate now, the moss is grown, the different mosses, too deep to clear them away. The leaves fall early in this autumn, in wind. The paired butterflies are already yellow with August. Over the grass in the west garden, they hurt me I grow older. If you are coming down through the narrows of the river Kyang, please let me know beforehand, and I will come out to meet you, as far as Chongfu Sha. This is the end of this poem, and also the end of my presentation. I wish after my brief introduction, you can understand Ezra Pound better and study Ezra Pound's poems better. Thank you for listening to my presentation. Thank you for watching this video. See you again.